There he is, bored.
Bordeaux Pepin.
I mean, it's fun because, man, there's just a million things for us to get into. You sort of are this personality on X. I've sort of obviously built that up over many years. And then I think we've chatted previously in a number of ways around sort of gaming and getting a sense of what's happening there. But you've kind of dove into the Zora ecosystem. And I think that the main thing that you have launched recently is this game on Zora. And I feel like maybe that's the best place for us to start. What are you doing there?
Yeah, and I think we can talk about Zora as well. And by the way, I feel so refreshed with my extra hour of sleep. So despite the 8 a.m. wake up, I feel good. Hopefully you do as well.
We're live, baby. We're live.
Yeah. So Zora for me has been a really interesting opportunity to break out of X. I've for many years tried to expand this identity outside of Twitter/X. I've tried Twitch, I've tried Farcaster, I've tried other social networks that have kind of risen and died. And there's two general problems I've run into. So one is the network effect issue. Every social network, basically like 99% of social networks that we see spring up, they just can't get the network effect. And part of the problem is that it's just hard to onboard people. If it's a crypto native social network, there's a lot of stuff people aren't used to, right? Like a typical network is I give you my email or my phone number, I'm in, let's go. With something that requires you to have a wallet, a seed phrase, whatever it is, that's an onboarding challenge. The other side of the issue is that for me as a creator who doesn't show his face like a weirdo and just uses the PFP, it's hard to build up on something like Twitch or YouTube or social networks that very much rely on visual representation. You guys are here on the show, showing your faces bravely every single day, and it's helpful. And so when I learned more about Zora and I looked at sort of the latest iteration of Zora, it struck me as an interesting way to break out from X. So I'm very much seeing Zora as an opportunity to do that. And then the next question for me was, what can I use this platform for that is not just a redundancy to X, right? Like I don't want to post a tweet and then just go post on another network and have the same exact content. And so what struck me that was interesting about Zora is this looks like OG Instagram. You've got a grid layout, kind of reminds me of a board game table or a board game itself. Maybe I can make a game out of it. And so that led to the concept of punk hack. And we can get into what that means, but I do think that if you're going to participate in a social network that is emerging, that is smaller, you've got to do something that really is different and stands out from what everyone else is doing. And I think that turning my profile into a game platform is doing that.
I mean, what specifically about Zora gave you confidence that they could potentially combat the network effects in a way that the other platforms you mentioned couldn't?
I think the onboarding is definitely a big part of it. You guys, I think, have talked a little bit about this. I've seen other people make the point that you can send someone your Zora profile and they can immediately just jump in and understand it. If they need to create a profile, it takes, a minute or less. That's it. As simple as that is, I think that's so important. And I'm a big proponent of decentralized social networks, but the first kind of 5 minutes of usage for any user that is not crypto native needs to be just, stupidly easy. And I think Zora's nailed that. So I'm banking on them having a good shot at actually winning this, sort of social financialized, network game that a lot of people have been playing for the last few years.
Yeah, got it. I mean, let's get into the game. I'm on your Zora page. It says the reveal is November 3rd, and it's November 3rd.
That's today. It's today. Should we do it on the show? So it is going to be today. I'll probably reveal the suspect in about 4 hours. But yeah, for anyone who hasn't followed along, you can easily go to punkhack.com. It'll redirect you to my Zora profile. And in essence, it's kind of like, if anyone's seen the movie Knives Out or played the game Clue, it's a whodunit mystery. The premise is that 6 friends go to Dubai for a CryptoPunks meetup. And by the end of it, all 6 friends lose their CryptoPunks. They get hacked. And of course, one of the friends is the thief, and you have to solve, who it is. And so for the last few weeks, I've basically been releasing these breadcrumbs of clues on my Zora profile. And the goal is for you to piece together who might have done it based on the information that I've shared. And so today's the big reveal. After that, this particular game will be done. And I do have plans to release different formats of games in the future. And hopefully you'll see there's kind of a connective tissue between all the games that I build.
That connective tissue for Zora is sort of these nested markets, the paired with creator coin paired with content coin. What about that model has sort of allowed you to go, or maybe what does that unlock for you from like a game design perspective? How integrated are you into the tokenization of that network?
Well, one of the challenges, constraints, I guess that I was thinking about with Zora was you've got this model where there's a creator coin, right? So I have the board coin. You guys, have the 11 a.m. one as well. And so that premise is easy. If you think someone's interesting or cool and want to follow what they're doing in the future, you can buy their creator coin. But Zora also does the whole content coin thing, right? Everything's a coin. All reality is a coin. So the question I kept asking myself, and a lot of people continue to ask, is what's the motive, incentive, reason to buy an actual piece of content on Zora? And for me, the answer was make that part of the game, right? So you've got these 6 characters that I've created. They have their own post. They have their own token. For you to play this game, you have to buy the token of the character that you think is the suspect, right? So I've created this incentive model. And then people might ask, well, fine, that's all well and good during the game. What do I do with these tokens after the game is over? You'll find out very soon. But that's the way you have to think about it, right? I think for the Zora flywheel to make sense, it can't just be about the creator token. You do need the content tokens to have purpose as well. And I think the way that the Zora guys have been thinking about this, which I think is accurate, is that not every piece of content on the internet needs to have value, right? Like if you think about 1,000 posts on Twitter or 1,000 articles that are released, on the New York Times or whatever, 1 out of 1,000 really gets a tremendous amount of attention and then subsequently economic value, usually through advertising and other sort of indirect means. That can be true on Zora as well, right? Like I can put out 1,000 posts and one of them is going to be a banger and that's going to be worth money for whatever reason. And that's fine. Everything else can be zero and that's totally okay. Part of the game is that you're trying to figure out which content is going to become collectible and will actually resonate with people for the long period of time. So that's kind of how I was thinking about the game and just Zora in general. And then for me as a creator, I just think that they set up a system that relieves me of a lot of pressure. Like the 5-year trickle release of your token over time, that basically is leaning into the can't be evil versus won't be evil, right? Like I can't go and sell my token because it's going to take 5 years to release it. That's a confidence that gets instilled in my followers. And I think that, the sort of economic short-term incentives of me earning Zora token and Ethereum versus my own token is really smart. And again, Zora is basically just taking elements of other things they've seen and trying to find that formula that works really well and is sustainable. And they're not perfect, but I think so far they've kind of cracked the code better than any other social financial.
What do you see as being remixed here? Like what are the priors here that are coming in and being remixed at Zora?
Yeah, I mean, so definitely. So from just kind of a platform standpoint, I mentioned it looks like OG Instagram. So from a technical standpoint, that's great. From a sort of a coin and flywheel standpoint, you've seen elements of this, especially on the Solana network with things like Pump Fun and Bags and Boob and all these other guys. To some degree, the Clanker ecosystem has created sort of elements of creator of token earns when people trade the coin. So that's worked kind of well. I just, they've assembled it in a package that just feels right and very consumer friendly, is the best way I can explain it. I'm not an economics whiz or a technical guy, but as a user, right, as like a consumer, for me at least, it feels right. My gut feels happy at the moment with Zora.
I'm interested in your general takes on, I guess, crypto as a game or speculative entertainment. I think you have a history in the gaming industry, so just interested in kind of how you think about crypto gaming.
Yeah, I mean, it's the greatest role-playing game that's ever been devised in human history. I was somebody who grew up, so I did work in the gaming industry, but I also grew up playing, like hardcore Japanese RPGs, 100 hours plus of storytelling leveling up. And it's actually sadly very difficult for me to play video games now. It's something I grew up on, grew up on. I worked in the industry, and now, like, if you give me a game that is going to take me more than 10 hours to beat, I have that same problem that everyone is experiencing now who's terminally online, which is like, I can't finish the book, I can't finish the game. But it's an RPG, right? It includes you leveling up your character, which is generally in the form of money, but also through your social, identity and following and progress. You can join clans, which are kind of social chains, or different types of chains or communities. There's a lot of tribalism. There's a lot of PvP. There's a lot of PvE, right? We're experiencing PvE, player versus environment, right now, because there are big powers in the world that are flipping switches, and Bitcoin go down, Bitcoin go up. So it very much is, this 24/7 role-playing game that has much higher stakes.
Feel alive. I am interested. So I think I very much agree with you. This sort of, and we've talked a lot about it on the show, like these applications that make it feel good or easy or less risky to launch tokens, I think we're pretty bullish on. And I think that's maybe the big distinction we're seeing in maybe something. I mean, I think Pump unlocked that in a big way with their bonding curve, and I think we still have a long way to go. And we're also seeing sort of these social contexts be a core part of that. And so thinking about the Farcaster ecosystem and Clanker, as we discussed last week, seeing that as like this interesting stack that both allows for tokens to be launched into an audience that kind of cares about them, and also reduces the complexity, burden, overhang, mental or technical, et cetera, to launch those tokens. So I'm curious, if you look at sort of what's happening over in Farcaster and what's happening over in Zora, do you see one doing it better than the other? Or maybe said more directly, like, why aren't you doing this in Farcaster?
Yeah. I mean, for the record, I invested in Farcaster. I believe it's a very important product. As somebody who has a lot of value in my Twitter account, the idea that it can just be stripped away from me tomorrow is very scary. So I love the premise of a decentralized social network, and it's important that it thrives. But I think that what I've learned from game design is that when someone starts to play a game, they need to have simplicity. When you start playing Mario, you learn in the first minute just how to jump, how to kill an enemy, and then you're presented with all these other complexities. But it has to start easy. Farcaster does not start easy, right? Like, you're basically thrown into a game of World of Warcraft, and you've never played an MMORPG before, is the analogy I would use. Whereas with Zora, it's pretty simple. It's like, okay, this looks familiar. I can sign in quickly with something that is, very Web 2, and I'm off to the races. And I think that's important. I think every social network that is successful generally takes that approach. And so if I were to give advice, to Dan and team, and, I think he knows this, it is just completely stripping away the complexity of Farcaster for the first, day, week, whatever it is, so people can just get into it. But because that learning curve is still pretty steep on Farcaster, I didn't feel like building a game on top of it would make a lot of sense versus Zora.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, it feels like if we're looking at crypto as a game as well, the learning curve to getting into that is massive. Like and fraught with risk and loss for most people who come into that game. I'm curious, if you sort of look into the future, what needs to change for this sort of meta game that I think we're all infatuated with to break into wider audiences?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Just this morning, I was complaining on the timeline about how it's taking almost a week for my Coinbase funds to release, and I think that's just like, that's not unique to them. That is Web3, fusing with Web2 and the legal regulatory environment. But it's clunky, right? Like, everybody wants everything now, fast. Like, if you're gonna show me something new, then I need to be able to just jump into it right now. And there's a lot of obstruction to crypto's adoption, because if you want me to use this product, then I'm going to have to wait several days, and then write down some stuff on a piece of paper and bury it in my backyard to protect it. That is clunky. So when I see things like Privy growing and large Web2 companies just streamlining the process of jumping into crypto having your money readily, accessible within minutes. That's going to help. And I took that approach with the Zora. Like if I wanted to create something that was appealing to an existing crypto audience, I probably could use, Farcaster, or just, completely lean into, the market that already exists. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be able to post on my X feed that, hey, I'm making this game, and literally a person who never has used crypto before could play it. That was my goal. And so I think more builders in this space need to do that. And unfortunately, what's happened, especially in the bear market, is that startup founders have tried that. They've been very, enthusiastic about, I'm going to onboard the masses to my platform. And then through pressure from the realities of the economy, from their investors, whatever it is, they go back to, no, I'm just going to try to go after the Web3 audience again, right? The crypto degens. And that's just an increasingly hard, community to go after.
All right, Board, we got to leave it there, man. Big reveal today in a couple hours at your, I guess, the board, or zora.co/board, to see the game in action that you can jump into. Sounds like there's more to come here. Looks sexy, man. Looks sexy. Market's down, fun is up. It's at Board Elon Musk on X. Appreciate you hanging out with us today.
Absolutely. Take care.
Cheers, man.
Peace.